I got the direct drum set up in my little press I made to remove the snap ring that's down in there. And once you get that out of there, it can remove the retainer and the springs, pull the piston out, clean it up, put two seals on the piston, and then reassemble it. I got the snap ring off and the retainer plate off for the piston. Let's pull the piston out. Yep. That's what happens to a transmission when it gets old. See that? I'm surprised it actually did that when I pulled it apart. The seal rips in them. And that's why your transmission doesn't work. A lot of times it's not the clutches are bad, it's these seals get ripped. You can see it right there, it's ripped. They get old and hard and they fall apart. That was actually a good example there. Just like unstringing from the whole thing. Yeah, you can see it's pulled away right there. Shine some light on it. Right there. There, it just fell off. There's just one little chunk holding on. Oh, it fell off too. That's how rotten it is. Anyways, we'll get all this stuff cleaned up, put some new seals on it, and get her put back together. I do have some different springs for here too. The ones I'm installing are supposed to be stiffer. We'll test them out and see how good they are before we put it back together. The seal's off the piston, and the inner one up here is even hard, but it was cracked also. But if you look down in here, it's still stuck on the piston. Or not the piston, but the drum. There's part of that one. And we're going to be dual feeding the direct piston. And we have to remove this inner seal in the drum here. It's a little dark down here, and get a little light down in there. This seal right here, we need to remove, and it feels as hard as a rock too. Take the screwdriver down in there. If we can get her out of there. Yeah, she's pretty stiff and hard. Usually you can just pull them out of your finger, but Jesus. That one's in there good. Yeah, well, you get the idea. But this seal gets removed and it does not get put back in. You throw it in the garbage. You don't use the new one. So you end up with just one seal on the piston there and one down in there. We're going to clean up all this and get her put back together, and we're also going to put a 34 element sprag in it, which is an upgrade too. I think earlier I said 32 element, but that's 34 element. Originally got 16 in it, which is right there. Okay, got the piston in the direct drum, got the new seals on it. And like I said before, I just use like a 7 to 9 thousandths feeler gauge and go around the outside. You can get it down in there, but lube it up with some Vaseline or petroleum jelly and a little bit of tranny fluid, and it'll go right down in. Now, you need to install these stiffer springs and put the retainer and the clip back on. Then we can put or work on the 34 element sprag part of it. I'm not going to set up the clutches yet because I like to stick the drum down inside the transmission because it's easier to grab and then put the clutches in it, but I'll check the stack before I do that. Got the drum back in and the springs compressed down. Now all I need to do is get that snap ring back in that little groove down in there, and that can sometimes be a pain in the butt. I got the ring back in there, so all I need to do now is let up the tension on the jack here, and it should be good to go. And there we go. We got a rebuilt drum. All you do is, like I say, got 34 element sprag in there. And all you gotta do is check the stack height. Okay, got the 34 element sprag in there. As you can see, there's way more dog bonies in there. You always want to make sure that turns to the right freely. If it does not, it will lock your transmission up. So I need to put that race back down in there. And this cover plate back on. And then the spiral ring instead of just a single snap ring. This has little grooves in it to lock itself in there too. These are stronger than the single one, so basically that's just off a 4L80. So it's a Sprag. Get that on, we'll be done with the drum, check the clutch height. I got that snap ring on down in there, and that thing can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Mostly because you can see it right there's that little catch on it. And that has to be in that catch or it's not in right. And there's also one right around the corner of it. You can find it here. It's like right there. There's like a little tiny bump right there. Because the bottom side looks just like the top side. And they both need to be in those little grooves, and they are a pain in the butt to get them in those grooves. But that makes it a lot stronger. That spiral ring and the 34 element Sprag. And dual feeding the direct clutches. That's a good setup. Tough. Now all you need to do, check the clutch stack. But I'm not going to do that today. I've did enough for the day. We'll do that tomorrow. Time for a break. Of course, you can't get that to fall down in there, but that goes on there and that goes on there. Once you get this finished, then we need to work on the forward clutch over here. The forward clutch or the pump. And the forward, like I said before, we're going to have the piston machine so we can stick thick steels in instead of thin steels. And it should have everything for the pump, except I'm going to put a stiffer pressure spring in it, which I was trying to buy off eBay. I wanted to use my eBay bucks on it, and I haven't got them yet. And they'll probably be sold out of them by the time I buy it. But who knows? It's the only thing on there I want to buy at the moment, so might get screwed. Who knows? Anyways, I'm getting a pile of parts down there. I need to get this finished up tomorrow. I've had a long day. I got the forward clutch assembly finished. Got it all back together. Basically, it's the same steps that you do in the direct clutch, which is there, but they take the same clutches and steels. One thing I did do, which I should pop that apart to show you, which I'll do here in a second, but I did work on the tail shaft, got a new seal and bushing in it, so that's ready to go. And I started working on the pump. I got it split in half and I cleaned it up, removed the sealing rings and the shim, but I still need to get those bushings out and put new bushings in it, so I have to cut those out. Another thing I need to do is remove the boost valve assembly here. I bought a stiffer spring for the pressure regulator, so it'll raise the pressure in the transmission up to get a little better clamping force. Here's the cast iron rings I took off the pump, sealing rings. There's the shim, the selective shim for your front end plate. Of course, the gasket and the rubber all gets replaced. And here's the pump gears, which are in real good shape. One easy test to see if they're junk or not is pulled apart. That small gear pulls out of the big gear. The gears are shot, but I've yet to see one that was shot. Usually what happens to them is you get foreign material in there and it'll eat up the gears put grooves and all sorts of stuff in them, but these ones look good. And also, when you install it, the tangs go up, just like that. That's how it goes back together. That's where your torque converter grabs those little notches sticking out there. Also on the front cover, I still need to remove the seal and put a new bushing in there. One thing I noticed, that bushing is in real good shape compared to a lot of them I've seen. Looks usable again to me, but I'm going to put a new in it since it's apart and put a new seal in it. So, I actually want to clean a little bit on these too. Go around wire wheel the sealing area here. So there's no rust or garbage on it. I'll go back over and show what I did to the forward clutch. Alright, here's the forward. I got the hubs out. And I put all thick steels in the forward. Which what I mean by thick is the thickness of these steels. They're 70 thousandths and 90 thousandths. Might be, I can't remember what they measure, 71.23 or 91.23. But anyways, I had to change the piston down in here. Instead of taking the old piston and putting it in the lathe and cutting it for the right thickness, I actually had one that was right. So that saved a little bit of time. But this hub goes down in here. There's a brass thrust washer that goes down in there that rides inside there. But your older transmissions have a cast hub here, and these will break under high horsepower and torque. But what I'm doing here is just fine with this. I think they say these hold to 500, 550 horse. But your 4L80s have a cast steel hub in them, and they say they're good for 750 to 800 horse. And this is not going to have nothing like that, so this is perfectly fine. But that goes down in there, and this goes on top. This side rides down inside here. The direct hub, forward hub. I just need to put the ring back on, but just thought I'd show that. Here's the piston that was in the forward clutch, and it has a 3 code on it, and that stands for the thickness between right here and right there, and a 3 code is 750 thousandths, which is 3/4 of an inch. So when that's in the forward clutch, and then your clutch stack height from there up to the pressure plate, you have to use all thin steels, the 70 thousandths thin steels. Now, I had a piston because I have an older transmission. It was thinner. It measured 690, and that allowed me to use the thick steels, all 5 thick steels in there. And it came out perfect. Usually, kind of a rough estimate on your clutch clearance is 10 thousandths per clutch, and I got them both set up with right around 45 to 50 thousandths, which is perfect. Removed the boost valve assembly out of the pump. This goes right down in that hole there. And this is one of the most important things rebuilding the pump, is to look down inside this bore and check for scoring, because if there is scoring down in there, oil will leak past the lands of the boost valve and send oil where it does not, or excuse me, should not be going. Now, Sonax sells a kit for that to help remedy the problem if there is scoring, but I just recommend getting a different pump if it's scored real bad, and installing the Sonax kit anyways. But this one to me looks real good inside. It's kind of hard to see, but Basically everything that's on this transmission actually looked pretty good. Shine some light back in there. Yeah, it looks real good. I've had some that were horrible. Usually the scoring will occur this way, and the valves moving back and forth, and up inside here too. This one looks good. We should be good to go. That's very critical to check those out. A little cruddy still, I need to clean it up, but you get that cleaned up, get those bushings out, get the new ones in, and I can reassemble the pump. But I gotta wait on my spring that I ordered, and who knows when that'll show up. Might be this week, might be next week, but at least we'll have it all together. And all we gotta do is put that spring in and then finish assembling the transmission. But I can install the direct and the forward in the transmission once I get the pump halves lined back up, which I always use the case to do that. And there's the parts to the boost valve assembly. Need to get a little better light, get rid of the flashlight, but Sonic sells an O-ringed one of these, which I did buy. I have one to put in there. And they do sell one of these that has a Teflon scarf seal on it. But this is an older transmission, and they do not sell it for the older one. It's for 71 and newer, I believe. They also have an end plug with an O-ring on it too, which helps seal it up also. Which I do have that in the kit. Haven't decided what I want to do there yet. I'm going to get the pump fixed here. Try to get it assembled back together. And I'll show you that when I'm done. I managed to get the bushings in the pump, in the front and the back. It's all cleaned up, ready to reassemble. And now to check to see if it fits on the forward clutch on the main shaft. You know you did a good job. It just goes right down on it and spins. So that's good to go. We just need to assemble the pump halves back together. Take this over here. Got the front cover, got the new seal in it, the new pump bushing. I just need to install the pump gears back in the way they're supposed to go. I'll put a little bit of oil on these before I put it in, but these notches, that side goes to the front, that goes to the back, just like this. I'll put some oil all over that, all over this, and the bolts, and then we'll drop it in the transmission. Line up the halves. Get a little piece of dirt down in there. We'll drop it down inside the transmission here. Line up the halves. The pump halves are installed in the transmission case to line them up. And I like to stick a couple bolts through the holes to line up the pump, because these do move back and forth. They don't line up perfectly, and the bolts are torqued. So we're pretty much done with the pump. Just can't pull it out unless I take these bolts back out. Now after we do this, I still need to wait on my spring to show up so I can assemble the boost valve assembly back together. But we should be able to put this back in the pan. We should be able to kind of do a dry run on the front end play. So we should be able to stick the direct clutch in there now, put the forward clutch in, put the gasket on there, tighten the pump down, and check the front end plate up and down on it. And that front end plate is changed by this little selective washer. There's different thicknesses of these, just like the back has. So I'm going to go ahead and install the direct clutch and the forward clutch and set the pump down in there. The direct clutch is ready to install, and I smeared oil all over everything to lube it up. Also, when I do this, I like to take all the clutches out. because it's a lot easier to grab it and turn it, because you gotta turn it when you go down in there. I'll get this installed, and then we'll put the clutches back in and drop the forward in. The direct clutch and all the clutches are installed. That was a pain in the butt, but sometimes they are to get the clutches lined up. I like to use the hub here to line the clutches up down in there, so hopefully it will go together a little bit better than the intermediates did, because I didn't have a clean hub for it to line the clutches up. Also, I'm going to double check the clutches. There's also a bronze bushing that goes there I need to install before we install it. Once I get that done, I'll install the forward clutch. Got the forward clutch hub back together, double checked all the clutches stills, everything's right, the hub's in, got that little bronze washer in there. Now it's time to take it over, drop it down in the transmission. See how good it goes down in there. Get it lined up just right, it should fall right down in. More than likely that ain't gonna happen. Well, I'm gonna have to work it back and forth, get it down in there. Got the forward clutch down there, you just kind of gotta work her back till it falls down in there, and usually you can stick your finger down in the side here and it almost touches, and you know it's right. Anyways, now it's time to set a gasket down in here. Take the pump, set it down in there too so we can check the end play. I need to stick this washer on there, put a little Vaseline on it so it sticks to it. Then we can check the front end play. New gasket is laid down in there. We probably could have used the old one, but I don't want to clean it up. Just probably down here and all that stuff nasty as heck. We're going to set the pump down in there. Got the little shim on there. And we can set this down in there. Hopefully I can do all this with one hand without screwing things up too bad. Of course, I got the pump the wrong way. The big end should be down. There we go. I can line the bolt holes up when I set it down. Set that over the top. Holes are pretty much lined up. Down she went. Now I'll have to kind of move that around, line the bolt holes up, and get a couple bolts in it, and then we can check that by going up and down on it. The front pump bolts are snug, so the pump should move up and down. And now I can check this. And to me it feels a little excessive. I did take a feeler gauge. Grab the light over here. You can go right up through there, the feeler gauge. Get some light in there, it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, I can zoom in on it. Right there you can see the gap up in there. And the specs are 3 to 24 thousandths, and the 24 thousandths feeler gauge fits in there way too easy. So I have a selection of those front pump shims, and I'm going to put a thicker one in it. Here's the old pump shim. It measures 95 thousandths. Now here's my selection of shims, which range from anywhere from 75 thousandths clear up to 130 thousandths. But I have two shims that are 105, and I'm going to try one of them in it and see how it comes out. If not, I think the next one I have is 130. I have to double check these again here, but 95 is your most common one that I have found in the transmissions in the front. Usually GM has them set up a little loose anyways, but I don't like it that far. I don't like the shaft moving in and out that much. So I'll go ahead and stick one of these on, check it, and see what it comes out to be. I changed the thrust washer to the thicker one and installed it all back like it was. And we have less front end play. It brought it down to 20 thousandths. And that is within specs, so that's the way it's going to be. I need to wait for that spring to show up so I can install the boost valve hardware and the pressure valve back in. And I'm just going to leave the transmission the way it is now until it shows up, and then once I get that in for good, we'll start on the valve body. I got some modifications I need to do to that too so it shifts better and quicker. Now we are on to the rear band apply and the 1-2 accumulator. There's a lot of parts all here. There's a spring. There's this piston. This is for the accumulator. And there are sealing rings on there. I replaced them with Teflon seals. These are the old ones that were on it. They actually look like they're in pretty good shape, but since it's apart, I'll stick some new ones on it. I kind of prefer the Teflon seals. There's a new seal there. It's a rubber seal where it seals in the case. And then there is the cover. There is a new steel shim gasket that goes on there. Not that that's pointing the right way. I haven't looked at that. All the bolts, everything's cleaned up. I like to run a file around this because they sometimes get raised spots along the edge, and it just makes sure it's not warped. We need to install all this into the transmission. It's now time to install these parts. And I have lubed up the transmission where all the seals ride. And always use something on the seals. Do not install anything dry. I see a lot of people on here like to install stuff dry, but do not do that. Pretty straightforward. You just plop her down in there. You can't give her a little bit of a push. Usually it won't stand anyways, but we need to lay that metal steel shim gasket on there. It is over here. That part about that, it's been sitting around a while. It's kind of got a little weird rusty look to it, but it should be fine. And this only goes on one way, which is not that way. It might go down. Yep, that looks right. I'll probably stick a little oil on that before I install it, because there's a little cutout there. Line that up. Covers that hole there. And of course that goes over the top of it. Leave that notch part there. Goes in that spot, but we can line that up once we get it oiled up. The rear servo and 1 and 2 accumulators installed. You just need to torque these bolts down. We'll be done with that step. Valve body is next, unless I get my pressure spring, which has not showed up yet. Ordered it probably 2 or 3 days ago, and it finally shows it's moving, so hopefully I'll have it in a couple days here. Then we'll get back on the pump, finish the pump, get everything set up in the front, and then it will be valve body time. Got some modifications I need to do that too. Also, I mean, too many twos. But I have mods to do the valve body also, so it shifts better, and you can actually hold it in low gear without the transmission shifting out of low gear by itself, which is something that a Turbo 400 will do at about 4,500 RPM. There's a quick, easy mod to do to the valve body to cure that problem. Back to working on the Turbo 400. I got my new pressure regulator spring in the mail today. That is the new one. That is the old one. You can see the new one is just a hair longer. It increases the line pressure for better clamping force on the clutches. We need to install that in the pump, and I'm going to install this new reverse boost valve assembly, a Sonax. And the reason for doing that is to eliminate cross leaks in your hydraulic circuits. Now they do sell a new pressure regulator valve, but it's for 1971 and newer cases, pump cases. This is of course a 68 transmission, so they do not make a new one for it, but it looked like it was in real real good condition, and the pump wasn't scored. If it was a 71 and newer pump, I would stick a new one in it anyways. I just like to do it when it's apart. Now here's the Sonax book, and it shows that pressure regulator valve. I'll kind of hold it here. Maybe you can pause it and read it if you like. And down here's all the nomenclature, I guess you'd call it, if that's the right word. How to install those parts, I need to pull the pump back out, take these bolts out. After you got the pump halves, or not the pump halves, but checking the front in play, which is within specs. I'll have to install those pieces in the pump. I won't show that because that sometimes is a SOB, and you probably don't want to see or hear me cussing. So once I get all those parts installed in the pump, I will put all the sealing rings on the pump, and I'll show you that, and I'll install it. I got the boost valve assembly back together with the stiffer spring in it. And what makes this pain in the ass is that little snap ring right there. You gotta push all that in there and hold it down inside, and then get that snap ring in there. Sometimes it can be a pain, but I did it quite a few times. I kind of got a knack to doing it. But one of these days I should make a little tool. Get you like a flat piece of metal to sit here, stick a bolt with a nut through it so you can push down on that and hold it down. But anyways, there's quite a few pieces and parts when you put this pump back together. Of course, you gotta have that selective washer on there. And there's these two sealing rings go in these grooves. I like to use the Teflon rings. There's a rubber seal that goes out here in this groove. And then on the front side, there's these new washers, sealing washers that the bolts go through to hold the pump on. Goes in your bolts here, which is this bolt right here. We're going to put the new rings on it. Once we get all that installed and lubed up, we'll drop it down into the case. And then we'll be done with the insides, the internal part of the transmission, and I'll be left as the valve body. I got the pump all ready to go in. It's all lubed up. Got the new washers on the bolts, the little sealing washers. We'll go ahead and set the pump in here. See if I can do this. Just one hand, I should be able to. Not really that heavy. You don't want to drop it, that's for sure. Just slide right down on there. Get the bolt holes lined up, it's the worst part. Be right in there somewhere. I'll have to fine tune it, get the bolts started. Alright, we are done with the internal guts. It's finished. Got the bolts all lubed up and torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. All 8 of them. A lot of your newer pumps are missing. They have 5 or 6 bolts in, I can't remember, but they have a less number of bolts in them. I don't know why they did that. They apparently figured that they're coming to the conclusion that it did not need that many bolts in it, and it's probably saved them some money by, taking a couple bolts out. Saved them 5 cents a bolt. But anyways, on to the valve body. I need to plug this hole still. I believe I have some plugs. I'll have to dig through my supply of transmission parts and see if I have anything or not. But I did get the Teflon seals on there, which is the intermediate band apply piston. We could stick in the modulator, I guess. It wouldn't bother none if we did. There's a little valve that goes in there, which is in this pan right here. Clean that up. And there's the little deal that holds it on. There should be a bolt here yet. I'll clean up all that stuff and put the modulator on. I got the modulator valve cleaned up. I need to lube that up. Slide it in the transmission right here. Of course, there's the bracket. bolt, but a new modulator, and look at this. This surprised the hell out of me. Made in USA. Rostra. Well, Rostra, good for you. You can send your work over to China. Good quality part, made in USA. Got the modulator installed. A good quality USA made modulator. And I also got the plug inside the hole there. That'd be kind of hard to see, but maybe we can zoom in on her here. Hopefully it don't blur out. It's a little tiny 3/8 plug down in there. Got a little bit of red Loctite. Help hold it down in there. But I'm done for the day, so we're gonna cover her back up and let it sit this way so that it just kind of sits there and dries. And we'll get back on her tomorrow. Moved on to the modifications of the valve body, and I have all of them done that need to be done. But the first thing you need to do is remove the 1-2 shift valve. But you have to remove this out of the valve body. There's a little roll pin that holds it in. And the roll pin is right here. Goes right there. That hole on the valve body is the 1-2 shift valve bore. And that comes out first. Then the shift valve itself comes out. And the reason why you need to do that, replace this valve, is because the Turbo 400, unless it's the performance or I believe the RV transmissions, do not do this. They will shift themselves out of first gear and the second gear at about 4,500 RPM. In any sort of performance application, you do not want that to happen. But these two valves here came in a kit, like a B&M trans pack. You get these valves. Now this is an older kit. I don't know if your newer ones still come with the small valve. This was out of an older kit. Anyways, that's the small valve, which the majority that I've worked on do not have the small valve. The majority have the large valve in them. It's a little too late to show you what we did to it, but this is one out of the kit. This is one out of the transmission. We put it in the lathe and copied the aftermarket one, just because I want to keep this with the kit. But the original shift valve has a larger land right here, which sticks up probably like right to there, like right here where we machined it off. You have to machine that down so it's smaller than the bore, and that keeps it from shifting by itself. But you also have to plug this hole right here, which I've already tapped. Actually, I had to drill it first and tap that hole for a 1/4 inch 28 plug, and that plug goes in there. I have to clean all this up, but that plug goes in there and blocks that hole off. That is the dump hole for the oil. Now I'll get this all cleaned up, install this valve in there, and put the other part of the shift valve assembly back in there. It has to be cleaned up first. And then we'll be done with the valve body. Then the next thing we'll need to do is drill some larger holes in the spacer plate here. There should only be 2 holes we have to drill. So I'm done with the valve body. And I'll show you here that I have a little Allen plug in there. It's Loctited in. I have the spool assembly installed back in the way it's supposed to be. I have the Allen wrench for blocking the accumulator for the 2nd to 3rd shift. Loctited in there. Also, I have the accumulator piston back in. I did not install the spring back in because there's no reason to. It's not doing anything. It's not functional anymore, and it's a lot easier just to put the piston down in there, the locking on, instead of trying to compress it back down in. We're done with that. Now I just need to drill some larger feed holes for first and second and third. I'll clean this plate up, get this old gasket removed, and show you the holes I will be drilling and what size I will be drilling them to. Now it's time to drill the holes in the separator plate. That hole is for third gear. It is going to be drilled to 0.140, and that is the second gear hole, and that is going to be drilled to 0.125. Once I get those drilled, separator plate will be. I got a new O-ring in the kickdown switch, plastic piece there. Also got a new shifter shaft seal installed. That stuff's pretty much straightforward. But I got the 6 check balls back in the transmission, and then this gasket goes on there, and then the spacer plate and this other gasket. Get the stupid thing lined up here. Goes like that and that. We need to install a little oval can solenoid that goes on here. Actually goes that way and hooks into the kick down switch. Then we can install the valve body, which I have everything cleaned up here. All the bolts, valve body, shifter selector, the 2 governor tubes, and that new little seal for the solenoid. I'm going to go ahead and stick all that together. The solenoid is tightened down. Of course, the spacer plate's there and both gaskets. This is the valve body gasket. That's the case gasket below it. It has that C on it for case. Right there. So now we just need to set the valve body down on it. I'll put the selector, hook up the selector there, and we set it down, and there's 2 governor tubes that go back in here. All kind of has to go down in there at the same time. And also the pin in the valve body pushes down on the intermediate band apply pin there. The valve body is now on. Got all the bolts torqued down to the specifications of 8 foot-pounds. Now all that's left to do is put the filter tube in and the filter on with this little bolt here. I oiled up the O-ring so we can slide it down in the case. Sometimes I like to put 2 O-rings on there. I don't have 2 O-rings. I like to do that more for a race application anyways. Tubes down in there. Now for the filter. Get it on the little rubber spot there. Not much for being left-handed, but it's on there. Bolts all nice and oily. Tough starting stuff left-handed when you're right-handed. There we go, the filter's on there. Next, we need to clean the pan up. I'm not sure if that pan's much good. It's pretty rusty on the bottom, but I'm going to check it out. Of course, got to clean all those bolts up. That's the spring out of the accumulators that I'm not using. Throw it down there with the parts I'm not using. And tail shaft. We installed the tail shaft. There's also an O-ring there too. Now time to install the rear tail housing. There's a new gasket and a new O-ring that goes on the shaft. This is pretty straightforward. Put that on there and then drop the tail housing down on. Install the bolts. The tail housing has been installed, and basically all that's left is the pan. You clean the pan up, check it out, make sure it doesn't have a hole in it or anything. The transmission is finished. Got the pan on. I don't know if I'm going to use this pan. For sure there's some pits in it. I don't think it'll leak, but maybe I'll find a better one. It's just on there to sealed up for now, and I got the yoke in. Got housing yokes on, so it's done. Besides giving it a nice aluminum spray bomb paint job and go clean it off. It needs to warm up a little bit over on the other side.